Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. Today, we're talking about when your child says they want to shoot up the school, which does not sound like a good thing you want to hear your child say.
I don't know if a lot of our intro sentences, Josh, are good things always.
Right.
We're usually going for something provocative of all right, now here's how you get to solve the situation.
True.
Well, I don't think parents want to hear their child come down the hallway and go, "Hey, I'm gonna try LSD today."
That'll
See
be
you
our
guys
next
after.
episode.
I'll see you guys after school.
Yeah.
Well, actually, should that be a note for a subsequent podcast when your kid wants to do drugs?
Could be.
We're putting that in the notes.
There we go. It's going in the notes. And so, because not many parents are going to hear their kids say that statement. So it's not exactly something that your kids like at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just thinking that maybe tomorrow I was going to shoot up the school.
In my story, that is what happened.
And so that's where you're going to go with your story.
Yeah, and it's not a very long story. I had a client who told me that their kid it was kind of just an out of the blue statement. They were like, yeah, because let's see, what did I says they want to go? Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the exact quote is. It's something about, I think he said, if I had a gun, I would probably go to daycare and shoot my teachers.
Whoa.
And so in this case, those specific words mattered because it was I said, okay, to the school. And she goes, no, to the daycare. Right. And so in this particular kid's life, those were two different locations.
Yep.
And so we were talking about, and what we ended up doing, and I suppose this is relevant to the conversation, right? I was hearing this story, essentially in the waiting room of our counseling room. The mom was telling me, and then the mom was also telling the child's counselor, who's one of my coworkers. And so the kid went to go to be with their counselor for their session, and then I went to go to be with the mom for her session, and we talked about it, and they talked about it. So that's always kind of one of the approaches that we talk about you may need professional assistance for whatever it is that you're going through.
Right.
So for something like that could be one of your interventions. Do you have a counselor that you can talk to? And then my coworker here, made sure to talk to the child about the situation. And I followed up with her afterwards and said hey, how'd it go? And her comment was, she said, well, he's a giant ball of energy. So getting a long-term conversation out of him is hard no matter what the topic is. But she said, but he also wanted to make sure to clarify, or probably she clarified with him. He probably wasn't so concerned about clarifying that he didn't want anyone to be hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. So he was mad about something seemingly. And then also kind of just these are the real practical safety things that was going through my head as we were handling this situation. Because I was trying to remember, this wasn't the conversation that she was having with the kid. This is the conversation I was having with the mom. It's and I knew she had firearms in the home. And I asked her about it. It's so tell me about, kid said X, right? Kid said he was going to take a gun. And she goes, yeah, no, none of them are within his access. They're all locked up. They're all... and I think she was even talking about at my mom's house, any firearms that she have are all locked up. And the grandparents' house, any firearms that they have are all locked up. And then she goes, and then I was even thinking about locking up the kitchen knives. Because she said there was a time he had a kitchen knife and was acting squirrely with it. And I said, yeah, you can, because I'm imagining, Eric, that you probably more than most people know what it's like to lock up sharps in a house. Have you ever had to do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had to do that.
How hard is that to do?
It can be really tough.
It's a pain in the neck.
Then you go to make dinner and you're like,
right. 100%.
well, and it doesn't mean you're not going to go get a knife. You're going to get a knife, but then you have
Right.
to.
But then you have to make sure you know where it is.
Right. You have to know where it is.
Right.
My biggest piece here is, so when you're hearing a statement like this, because generally, I mean, a kid isn't just going to be happy-go-lucky going, I just thought I would, shoot up daycare, hey, let's go play football, or I think I want to play Pokemon, and when your kid seems like there's something going on, what you need to do is come close and be able to sit down and go, okay, what's going on?
Yep.
Right. Something's not right. When I was growing up in grade school, there was a bully and he picked on so many kids. And I had figured out by about the fourth grade that, maybe one way to eliminate the bully situation if the building burned down, he couldn't be there.
That's a solution.
That was what that's what I had in my mind. And so I had,
because you were like 9.
I was like 9. And so I'm like, okay, let's burn down the grade school.
Oh my God.
Now there's 4 other grade schools in town. Okay. So, I mean, the logic is not working here.
The follow through was really not going to happen.
Well, and it gets a little better in that. But because I mean, like, I had maps. I drew out the school. I had maps. I talked to my friends. We had an idea of an accelerant, gasoline, and where it would go best. And then suddenly I realized there's a flaw to the plan. And they're like, what's that?
If you walk to the school holding cans of gasoline, it might look suspicious.
No, we had that covered. The building's made of brick.
Thank God.
Right. And we're trying to start, our idea is to start it from the outside. And there was no way we were going to get the accelerant on the inside, nor did anybody want anyone to get hurt either. You know, this was like a weekend thing, and you can't get into the, so
in the exploratory conversation with you, had your parents had it.
Oh, we haven't got there yet.
Well, but like, I didn't want anyone to get hurt.
Yes.
You're saying that already in this plan, which is an important thing to suss out.
Piece. Yes, exactly. Because one of my...
Because you were trying to solve a bully problem, not hurt anyone.
We're trying to solve a bully problem, which...
That would be really hard if I'm your parents going to you're going to...
Right?
Ate a microphone.
Right.
You're going to burn down the school?
Exactly.
You'd have to dig into, because I have a bully problem.
And that's the thing, is that the first thing as parents is... get your initial reaction, take a few steps back, even go out of the situation, let yourself cool down, let yourself kind of absorb that.
Make sure your kid doesn't have access to gasoline.
Well, but you haven't even got there yet. Because one of the first things you have to tackle as a parent is, what does everyone else think? Is that going to make everyone think that I'm a bad parent? Because
if they knew your kid said that.
Well, see, here's how we got exposed, is that one of the other kids had one of the maps, and their parent had found it, and then they had gotten them to talk about it, and then they called my parent, and then my parent came down, and they were like, let's talk about this, and my dad was even like, you know what, so I don't want to talk about that you want to burn down the school, because I think he's thinking, one, you must not have realized it's brick. So, there's not a lot to this plan.
Well, let me just call out another thing I'm hearing is, you've repeatedly said in the stories about your childhood, the parents in your friend group knew each other.
Yes.
And there was a benefit to knowing.
Hugely.
Like if I'm the parent, knowing my friends, knowing my kids' friends, parents, and families, so that you can have this collaborative, problem-solving, beneficial relationship.
And just to throw this out there, none of the parents were the same faith.
Oh, like religion.
They were all different walks of life, but for the sake of parenting children and raising children, they were able to come together. I mean, my best friend, Andy, his family was Mormon, and his parents never, ever tried to get our family to go to their church. They knew that my mom was Baptist, and my dad was atheist, and we never tried to get them to go to church. There was this connection. In high school, my friend Tony, I mean, his parents were atheists, but our parents connected for the sake of raising children and helping each other do that. So yes, they called my dad and said, hey, we just want to let you know this is happening. Actually, they called my mom. And so my dad came in and he said, tell me what's going on at school. Because
he was already like,
this is not you.
That's a sentence.
Yeah, that's a big thing. It's not that I didn't have curiosities and excitements, and it's not that I didn't like, starting the fire in the wood place, but it's like, no, you're not a pyro. That there's something going on.
It wasn't fire for fire's sake.
It wasn't fire.
Which explicitly, maybe that's a different podcast if you have a fire starter.
Yep, exactly. And so I explained to him, some of the situations, and he was like, yeah, I had no idea that was happening.
You were able to quickly tell him, this is why.
This is why. And when I told him, he did not make it about, I'm a bad kid. He made it about,
there's
I
a
wish
really
you
good
would have
sentence.
come to me.
you're not a bad kid.
Right.
Because if your kid says, I'm angry and I want to go shoot up the school, if the message they hear from their parents is, you're a terrible human being,
Right.
that's probably not going to help.
No, it's going to foster whatever it is, and it's going to further isolate you from your parents. And
Which
and
probably
that's part
sounds
of
like
it.
the direction that someone would go who does end up shooting up a school.
Yeah, very much so.
Isolating, feeling like they're terrible.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to go those
Because
directions.
you can take all the guns away, you can take all the knives away, and the man will always beat the system. So he'll figure out another way to create what it is that he wants to do, what it is that he wants to do.
Also sometimes do those first things. And
If
then also do the
need-
second things.
For the need for safety, yes. But at the same time, don't think that's what's going to solve
Correct.
the problem.
Right.
Both.
Yeah, you've got to do both. And so my dad got in there, and then my mom engaged with the school and began to talk to them about what's going on in these classrooms. And she began to talk to the teacher because that was more her avenue than my
Engaging
dad's.
with the school.
Yeah. They had different ways that they would be able to address things and work with things in the community.
How did it feel being the kid to have your parents engage with this problem?
My parents had done a good job in explaining to at least me. I'm assuming they did the same thing to my brother, but we're 5 years apart. He's younger. They had explained to me that we're going to do everything we can to help you learn how to deal with and address the problems that come up in your life for you, so that you can take a step forward and be able to handle that. There will be times where you may ask us for help, and then we'll step forward. And there will be times where you have done everything you can do, and now our evaluation is, okay, it's our turn.
That's
And-
like a whole system
Yes.
that you have to create with your family,
Yes.
which is, well, it's what you just said. Like, there's going to be times and you should expect this.
Yep.
And we're your parents and
We're going to step forward and we're going to take over. And at those times, you may not like it. And we understand that. But you have to understand, as your parents, we have a bigger picture of what's going on, and it'll be okay. We have to do it at those times.
Did you think in this scenario you appreciated their assistance? They were going to provide it whether you liked it or not. But
Right.
what was your experience? Do you remember?
Because they laid that foundation, it was relieving.
It was relieving.
It was relieving to know that they were going to step in. Now, I eventually dealt with the whole bully problem in a different way, which did actually involve my parents as well, but that's kind of, we're not going to go there right now.
Oh, more notes?
But yeah, go ahead.
I've got like 3 new podcast ideas
I know,
just from this
right?
conversation.
But
Erik deling with a bully.
the thing is, having them step in made me feel supported. Because the
I
whole
wonder if you
thing
would have felt that way if you hadn't had the, because you're talking about like they had set this system up and it was like a well-established thing.
Right.
I wonder if they hadn't had that, if you would have felt supported had they stepped in.
No, we'd have figured out how to move the accelerant to where we needed it to be to make the building go away and the bully go away.
So you're saying parents stepping in unexpectedly might not feel supportive to the child.
At times, correct.
Yeah.
And that this is an art.
I was just going to say,
Yeah,
and that's
you know.
like, I'm talking as though these could be hard and fast rules, and you're clarifying, well, no.
Yeah.
But they're good ideas.
They're
Keep
good
them in mind.
Keep them in mind. I knew a parent that their kid started skipping school. And so they put their high schooler on notice. If you continue to do this, I will come to school to check on you. You will not know that this will happen. And I guarantee you, I will be dressed in the most embarrassing way you can possibly imagine.
But they're giving them notice
giving
now.
them the notice.
I'm not going to give you notice,
Yes.
but I'm giving you notice that I'm not going to give you notice.
And I remember, because they had done this before. It's kind of a ground level thing, but the girl kept skipping school, and so dad showed up, and I mean he had like the weirdest type pajama type
Showed up in a
farm
onesie.
boy type everything going on, and His daughter was the second oldest. She was a sophomore. Her brother was a senior. And so she would come into senior hall in the hallway and just hang out with her brother and his friends. Well, Dad knew that.
And that's where she was skipping.
And that's where
she was skipping school to do that.
I think so. And so he showed up.
He knew where she was,
Yes.
being the key point.
And the boy, her older brother, was always on a lookout for Dad.
Oh, because he already had this.
He already had that. And so when he saw Dad at the end of the hallway, turned the corner, he went, oh crap, and disappeared, leaving his sister there.
Bye.
Because he was like, I told her, you better not do this. Dad found her, zeroed in on her, came down the hall, ran down the hall in the most obnoxious, oh my gosh, Sally, oh, I've so missed you, wrapped her up and smothered her in kisses on her cheeks. Boom, 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 boom. And it just embarrassed her so much.
Right. I was just checking to make sure you weren't skipping class.
I got the notice, I was so afraid. I just, and she never skipped class again. I'm not saying that this is the right thing to do for every child, and that's the thing. It's a tool, and it
might be like the really strange widget you keep in the corner of your toolbox that you only ever use once.
Exactly.
But it's there.
Yeah, because you have to know your kid well enough to know, would that get the point across and help them?
Or just make them angry and make them skip school.
I've known other parents that in the same situation, they also came in the worst bed attire, hair and curlers, no makeup, and went through and walked their kid to every single class and sat beside them for a couple of days. and it helped.
And it helped.
And it helped.
Notable point here.
And so the point is you have to know your kid, and then you have to get into tell me what's going on. Now,
I think that's our thesis statement.
Yeah.
For the episode.
And the other part of this is that you've got to know your power as a parent.
No joke.
So we get generally sick time, comp time, vacation time.
Oh, from your average employer.
If your kid is in a situation that you feel like they really need some type of time, taking some of that time, and we don't think about that traditionally. You can keep them home from school. You can take them to go and just spend time with them. You can see what you can do to really get in their world that gives them a feeling of, I'm here for you, not I'm here to drill you. I had one parent, and her daughter she had Asperger's. She was having a really hard time at the school that day. She would get targeted quite a bit. She called her mom. She said, you didn't come get me. I can't do this. I need to come home. And so mom went up there, and mom did a very different thing this time. She brought lunch. And so she brought a salad for both of them. And we'll call her Sally. Sally came out to the car, and she said, okay, let's go home. And mom said, you know what? I brought salad. I brought, your favorite drink. Why don't we just sit here and have lunch and just go from there after lunch is done? We'll decide what we're going to do.
Oh, like right now, we're staying right now. Here.
Let's just sit here and eat lunch. And so they sat there and they ate lunch, and they visited, and she shared her feelings, and she shared what was going on, and mom empathized, and she validated, and she supported her. And I said, okay, to mom, I said, okay, well, what happened after that? Sally decided after lunch that she was all right, and she was going to go in and finish the rest of the day. When I asked Sally, okay, so what happened? She goes, something really went well during that time, and I didn't feel like I needed to go home anymore. Now I'm talking to them at separate times. And she goes, I was okay to go back inside. She goes, it was the weirdest thing ever.
She didn't realize what had happened.
She didn't know what had happened. I said, Sally, I think what happened is that your mom connected with you in a very loving and nurturing way. And we need to figure out how to help manifest that more.
Yeah.
And she's like,
that was a good example.
Love that. And that was a hard part, is that mom did not grow up in a home where that nurturing, those pieces would happen. So she doesn't know what to do as a mom. And so she's trying different things. And man, she hit a home run in this one. And so you're looking for, what can I do? Because a lot of times our approach is, oh my gosh, that was so bad. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just did that. That's terrible, terrible, very bad. You're grounded forever. Go to your room. And
Like if your kid threatens to shoot up the school.
Right. I have no clue how I got to have such a bad kid who would even think of this. I had one little boy in grade school, and I had a parent that came in and said, he's pulling down his pants in class.
Oh gosh. Genuinely a problem.
Yes. And
Need to make that stop.
Yeah, and I had been seeing him since he was in kindergarten. Now he's in third grade. And I'm like, this does not sound like your son. Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, in kindergarten, we started to have, kind of some problems like this. And then a little bit in first grade. But, then it stopped, halfway through first grade. And in second grade, there was none of this. Mm-hmm. Now we're back in third grade and it's happening. He goes, I don't know what I've done wrong.
Oh.
And I went,
that's an interesting kind of additional problem.
Yes.
Is blaming yourself.
Well, see, that's where the ego pops back out of the box for us as an adult. And the first thing you have to do is you have to put it back in the box before you can address the problem. Mm. And so it's a natural, it's a natural healthy thing that the ego pops up and goes, oh my God, how did I do this? It's just a natural part of that.
If you take that motivation and take it to, this is terrible, I need to fix it, that's good motivation.
Well, the first thing is thinking, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
That's where that egocentricness is there. It's not bad. That's healthy. As long as you understand that's the first step. And now, okay, wait, we put that egocentricness back in the box. And now let's look at this for the problem that it is. Let's get the bigger picture. As I began to talk to, we'll call him Billy, little Billy, what I found out was there were 3 kids in preschool that had been tormenting him. They transferred into his first grade class. They were tormenting him, and then started getting him to do, these types of things. When he got into second grade, they weren't in his class at all. And so he had no contact with them. Now they're back in his class, and they just came out and told him, either you do what we want, what we're telling you to do, or we're just going to torment you like we did for those 2 years until you do it anyway.
So when you look at that situation, you see up front, my kid's pulling his pants down in class.
Yep.
And you probably go off down a rabbit trail of like, oh my gosh, where's this going? And you're saying the data leads back to bullying for this situation.
Exactly.
And I guess the takeaway is like, find out, dig in. Because like, I want to shoot up my school. Well, maybe they're having a difficult time. I want to burn the building down. It was bullying. He's pulling his pants down in the middle of class. It was bullying. Right. Like those aren't the natural like, oh, well, of course that's what it was.
Exactly.
And you have to dig in.
And it's not the natural way that a human being at those ages thinks. It's just that logical component of...
That's why the story is disconnected from the logical adult perspective, because the kid's not thinking that way.
They're not thinking that way. But it's not even... like a kid isn't just going to wake up and go, I was bored. We could do soccer. We could do football. We could shoot up the school. That's not in their wheelhouse of thinking. That's usually going to be... I'm afraid of something. I'm trying to protect myself. I don't have any power. I feel trapped.
It's a signal to, if your kid says something or is doing something outlandish, it's a signal to find out why, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. When I ran the revolt in preschool versus the napping, and I really...
Did we tell that story?
I don't know.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
We have told the story.
We have told that. But I wasn't trying to be malicious. I just was tired of laying there for a half an hour staring at the ceiling and something that was never going to happen for me. Mm-hmm. And when the adults felt that they had to have control and locked me in a closet at one point and then opened the door to let me out of the closet about 10 minutes before my mom was going to get there. So they had enough time. They had the snacks and things for me at that time and kind of smooth everything over. They were met with a kid who had his hands folded at his chest, who had just been standing there for, I don't know, I was in there 20 minutes or so waiting for them to open the door so that they could say, okay, you can come out now, and me to say, no, I'm staying.
So that my mom can see me in the closet.
So my mom, and they're like, why do you want to stay? Because my mom needs to find me exactly where you put me, because it was a different part of the situation that I knew I had power at that point. But if you're in a situation, where we've seen, over the last year, some different videos of, kind of daycare, kindergarten situations where adults have been, even beating or pushing around or, pushing food, in kids' faces, you're losing a lot of power in that scenario, And so I would have told my parents in a much different way to be able to get their attention, but you have to have that relationship and that connection. I saw which you're supposed to, I saw my parents as quite powerful people in the world.
Reasonably so.
Reasonably so. Some of it, is developmentally unreasonable. We used to have the arguments in the neighborhood about whose dad could beat up whose dad. And then we would actually set up the day that our dads was going to fight and place bets. Wow. And the only ones who weren't on board were the dads.
I was just going to say, I think you probably neglected to tell them.
We got them together and then figured we could trick them into it, and it didn't work.
Well, it would have worked with your friends, so why wouldn't it work with your dad, right?
Exactly. That's a great example.
That was the thinking, I'm sure.
Yes, that the thinking we had was not the same as the thinking that they had.
I could bait Johnny into a fight, so why couldn't I bait my dad into a fight?
Why can't I bait my dad into a fight?
Because he's got a couple decades on you is the answer.
And they figured it out pretty well. And we didn't know how, they were on the same page, in the whole supporting each other for parenting.
They probably had a good laugh about it, though.
Oh, they did. Yes.
So it's interesting how we kind of open with this provocative sounding topic, and the discussion kind of leads back to the fundamental principles we talk about all the time. And the idea of if your kid says something, I'll say bizarre or outlandish, it might be like a cue to find out rather than like, I don't know, try to slap that thing down and solve the surface level problem.
Yeah, it's a good time to be able to get into your kid's world, and again, this is an art, so there are going to be some kids you might have to be more direct, but there are going to be other kids that, that directness is going to go the opposite way, being more relational, being more supportive, being more subtle, helping them feel supported. One older girl I had, she did not feel her parents were supportive to her whatsoever. So if they would have leaned into her for something, it would have just sent her into her bed, for weeks for depression.
They would have needed to have established something different than they had.
Yep. Yeah. Well, if they would have come in and say, "Hey, let's go out. Let's go out for coffee." Or if, the stepdad would just kind of bring her some spontaneous chai drinks. And she was like, "What's this for?" And it's like, it's because I love you. That's it. It's just and so you're going back in to draw that individual, that child out in a much different way that helps them to a time. Because here's the bottom line: the biggest tool that parents don't always understand is that your kid wants to connect with you. Your kid wants to talk to you, and I know this because even the most abused kids would absolutely forgive their parent in a heartbeat if they thought a spark of being accepted and loved was there. So for everybody else who nurtures their kids, that tool is always there. You just have to find the right avenues to be able to connect with your child.
Yeah. So basically, I sort of took out of this whole conversation, number one, any statement like that from just a security and safety standpoint, you need to take seriously, make sure that they don't have things that they could do things, tell people if need be. But often it sounds like statements are being made when there's really deeper issues, and then it's work to get to those issues. And then it all comes back to a lot of the foundational stuff of just having that relationship, having that foundation really helps. And I think a lot of our regular listeners are familiar with that. But if this topic brought you here today and you're not familiar with how to build that foundation, how to have that relationship, how to do some of that stuff, definitely check out some of the resources on our website at empoweringchoices.community. And I think this will wrap this one up, and we will see you on our next episode.